Dom, welcome to the We Move podcast. Thanks for coming back and joining us for a conversation.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
It's just going to be you and I today. Normally James will be here. Unfortunately, he's just been held up, so we're going to crack into it and begin the conversation. So this is part two in a series that we're doing on the nervous system. Part one, which if you're listening to this, you can go back and listen to part one, was with Irene Lyon. She is a nervous system and somatic practitioner. And the purpose of the first one that I did with Irene really was to kind of lay the foundation of what the nervous system is. And so we kind of went into, it's almost like a 101 type conversation of, breaking down the autonomic nervous system, et cetera, et cetera. And so the reason that I wanted to do part two with yourself is because we've been working together on off for a couple of years, and we'll get to that in a moment. And whilst I've been doing Irene's work from afar, you and I have a session every month, and we've been doing that for a few years, like I just said.
More or less.
More or less. And so, we both have this kind of real-time experience, with me as the guinea pig of kind of how the nervous system has been evolving, or how my nervous system has been evolving over the past few years. And parts of that have included quite long periods of plateaus and then ginormous breakthroughs. But plateaus may be the wrong word, because it's been a necessary part to have the breakthroughs. You can't have a breakthrough every single session. I don't think I could cope with a breakthrough every single session.
Well, that, and also in your specific case, this pushing for a breakthrough is actually not what you needed, right? So this pushing was actually a big part of what we've been working on,
right?
So there can be a lot of value in a plateau, because it can actually just being in that moment of where you are, but it can actually inform the next steps instead of pushing for the next step.
Some reflection time is, I guess, would be one perspective, one way of putting it, or a different perspective. So okay, then, so just to kind of, what I would love to do is just to maybe begin with a little bit of my history, as in our history, and then I would love for you to share of like why you do your work, because for me, the reason I work with you, a ginormous part of that is because of your background and how you came to it. So I was thinking about this. I originally came to you in, I believe it was like late 2018. I just randomly woken up with some pain in my left foot. I would wake up every morning with this pain, and throughout the day it would kind of go. But this just kind of lasted, presumably probably for weeks or months. I don't quite remember, but I came to see you. We did everything apart from look at my left foot, and solved the problem. And I kind of went away, and I was like, great, I now have no pain in my left foot. Everything is good and rosy, and I can continue as I have been doing. And then, maybe like 12 months later, I turned up and I was having pain in my left knee, and I couldn't really describe it. It was just like kind of pain on the outside joint of my left knee. I'd get some pain in my IT band, pain in my left calf. And we started working together with it, and we've basically not stopped working for 3 years, sorry. But it's been an evolution and a progress from working with that left knee. And like we just mentioned, like this kind of consistently kind of turning up every week every month to do sessions, you giving me like homework, like movement homework. Okay, these are the movements that you're going to do at the various parts of your body, working through various areas of my body. So initially we were working through the ankles, and to see if they were moving correctly. Then we were working through the pelvis to see if that was moving correctly. And then, and then we would take some big diversions, whereas I would turn up and say, hey, my shoulder has been hurting the most this month. Okay, what's going on with the shoulder? And because there was no kind of rush for me anyway, that we knew I was just going to turn up every month and kind of work on what was hurting and what was painful, which is very different than the way that I would normally approach anything, which would be 100 miles an hour trying to rush through the process and get it done with, so I can kind of move on to the next thing on my tick list, which in and of itself is an indicator of the state of my nervous system. If you listen to the first episode with Irene, it's pretty obvious that I tend to live in a highly vigilant state where I'm just trying to kind of rush through life and get things done. So yeah, as we basically worked through over the past couple of years, my experience would be that slowly we would start to, the pain would disappear from my left knee, but then it would open something else up. And it was almost like a puzzle. Every time I would clear a pain up in a certain area of my body, something else would kind of emerge. And it's kind of like this ongoing puzzle where my body's made all these compromises over a long period of time that kind of gives me what becomes in my immediate attention is the pain that's going on, right, the thing that's the most painful. And as soon as I get rid of the most painful thing, then I kind of get to a slightly subtler layer, and then to another layer that's a bit more subtle, and another layer that's a bit more subtle.
Yeah. So basically, we've been following the breadcrumbs. You came to me with that left foot pain, and that went away, and something else started to hurt. And I always find that very exciting, because it actually means that we're peeling that onion, right? So you can have this foot treated again and again and again, but if there's no question being asked, why does that left foot hurt? This is what's generally missing, in my opinion. This asking why the left foot, not the right foot.
Sure. So I would turn up going, hey, this foot hurts. I want to just tell me what to do to get rid of the pain. I'm in a way, like I wasn't curious to begin with. I just need to get rid of the pain.
Yeah, but well, that's how you came to me.
Yeah.
But as you said, we then worked on everything but the left foot, and that pain went away. So and your history then started to come into that. So we looked at your movement, and we checked your movement and found actually you can't put any weight into your right foot. So is it a surprise that the left is starting to talk to you? Probably not. And I'm not sure how much of this you remember of the early sessions.
Very much so.
Shifting your pelvis over to the other foot. I almost didn't compute.
Very much so, because many years earlier, when I had first kind of things had started to cause me pain in my body, I remember I saw a Chinese doctor, and I was having loads of pain in my arms, and we basically figured out, or we didn't figure out, he figured out. I was having these problems with my digestive system, and it was referred pain. And it was like, well, everything in the body's connected. And I always remember him telling me that, and I never realized that to begin with. So then when I came to see you, and one of the prerequisites for coming to see you the first time around is I had to give you a list of all the injuries that I could remember that I'd sustained in my body, which was this crazy long list, because I've been so active in my life. And the very first injury I remembered was spraining my right ankle extremely badly. And so to this point, that was language for my body to say, okay, well, we need to protect the right ankle and not put any weight there. And then the next injury was I'd cut up my left knee, and I'd had to have stitches in it. So now my body's like, okay, so maybe we can't go to the left either. And this is just a very small example where then the body became so confused as to what to be doing. And over a period of time throughout my life, all my injuries would be on the right side of my body. My hamstrings, my ankles, so on and so forth.
Yeah, so there again, we can actually go back to this question, why? Well, why the left foot, not the right foot? Okay, let's check your movement. Well, actually, you can't put your weight into the right foot. Again, we can ask, but why can't you put your weight into your right foot? And that's where the history can start to shine a light on the problem, and things start to suddenly make sense. Especially when we then do a movement and you feel that things are more balanced. But now this balance kind of requires the rest of your body to be balanced, and we kind of followed into the next left knee thing. Because by shifting differently between the left and right, that requires something of your legs in a different way than just being on your left. So you can follow this process really, really nicely until now the very end, or the most recent sessions, I should say. Where's that all coming from? This tension that you've identified overall in your system that actually eliminates or restricts motion, now in your case, particularly around the pelvis. And this is what ultimately led you to your nervous system.
And so to elaborate on that, what I've recently discovered, one of my bigger breakthroughs recently was that my whole body is like a clenched fist that I hold, particularly around my pelvis. I'm always holding it under tension. Or frequently I'm holding it under tension until I can bring my attention to it and to release it. Before we get down too far down this road, or this line of conversation, we'd love just to kind of give context to how you yourself came to this work and why you do this work. Because whenever I talk to you about anyone else, I always share your story, because it's like your motivations for why you do the work, I think are incredible. And being someone that's been to many different practitioners and many different modalities, there's quite frequently I would not check in with the practitioner and what their experience was, and knowing your experience is the thing that kind of is the reason that I love to work with you, because of what you went through. So maybe you can just explain that.
Yeah, so long story short, I spent many years, a big part of my life, in pain. Pain pretty much everywhere, but always in the left side of my neck. And you know, I had seen all kinds of practitioners, and yeah, they might make me feel better for a couple of hours or maybe days, but things would always come back. And you know, it's very easy to then, if it goes on for so long, it's easy to resign and to say, well, so then this is just the way it is, right? And I actually hit that point at some point, because it didn't make sense for me to see anyone else, because I kind of had seen everyone. But that resignation was actually also a big problem, because there was a point when I really hit rock bottom, and I woke up one day and could not move my arm and could not feel my left arm. Now, all the nerves that innervate the arm, they come through the neck. So I did have, you know, all this neck tension, the neck pain for all these previous years. But then it changes suddenly when you can't feel your arm. You know, you don't resign to that anymore. It's like, fuck, what do I do now?
Do you
It's
literally
very
just
scary.
wake up and you couldn't lift your arm?
Yeah, I mean, so it is a kind of a blur, because it's not like I was completely fine and then I woke up with this arm. So there was always this neck pain, but the waking up, or the numbness in the arm, the no sensation, the no control over my arm, that was very sudden. Yeah, that I just woke up with one day, because it had just accumulated. And it's very scary to look at someone touching your arm, but you don't feel that touch. So I went back to see people. I said, well, no, like I have to do something. But it was the same story. You know, yeah, maybe felt a bit looser in my neck, but that's pretty much it. Until then, a friend recommended that I see someone, I think it was in North London, could be wrong, but in London somewhere, a Tuina practitioner. So Tuina is a Chinese form of massage. And this guy looked at me. He said, okay, hop onto the table. And he started massaging. So Tuina is quite a deep massage. He started massaging my left leg, my left calf. And I thought, well, that's a bit strange. I'm here I can't move my arm. Did you listen to me? And I got off the table and I had sensation back in my arm. So my mind was
What were
just
you,
blown by that.
I was going to say, what were you feeling and thinking?
So what I have to say was that because I had explored different movement modalities, including Feldenkrais, I did know about connections in the body. But that just brought it so to life to me. It's like, wow, this guy works on my left calf and foot and ankle, and I stand up and I have all this sensation back, and my neck feels amazing. So this person basically saw this really wonky Jenga tower when I stood in front of him. The problem was, a few days later, maybe a few weeks later, everything was back the same. So I went back, same treatment, felt great again, but it came back. So I said to myself, well, he's onto something. Like, I had my neck and my arm and my shoulders treated so many times with like no improvement. Now he works on my left leg and there is improvement. So he's onto something, but it's not quite enough. And that's when I, again, a very long story short and a long journey condensed into a few words. That's when I came across Gary Ward's work, who mapped the movement of every bone and joint in the human body in relation to every other bone and joint in the body. So in his book is called What the Foot, and he talks about the foot, the movement of the foot, and how the foot is, well, you can see it like the foundation of a house. So if you have an uneven foundation, that predetermines how you can build your house. So, and in my case, it's just, that's how it played out all the way into the neck. So I read that book. As I was reading it, I looked at my foot and said, oh yeah, my left foot looks quite different to my right. I wonder what my right foot does and what my left foot does. So I played with it. I tried to reorganize that movement, re-educate the movement. And here I am, pain-free. Feel my left arm. Yeah, I'm probably in my body, probably feel the best I've ever felt in my life.
Well, I remember you saying to me that the reason you do your work is because you don't want anyone to ever experience what it was that you went through.
That's true. Yeah.
For me, it's like that statement alone is like, that's why I want to work with that guy, because he's had the experience of knowing. Because I had a similar experience when I saw the Chinese doctor. Mine was, I couldn't, at the time I was working in an office and wanting to be, very successful in a business perspective, and I couldn't type, like that. My arms were so, I had such bad RSI in my arms. I literally had probably like 12 to 18 months of dictating to an intern to type all my emails. I mean, I was like 26 and I was sitting in an office dictating to like an intern to type all my emails. It kind of blows my mind that I managed to kind of do that. But it was such a traumatic experience because I was 26 and I was so healthy otherwise. And going into having spent then that 18-month period seeing all these different Western practitioners that were kind of massaging my back or whatever else they were doing, but to no avail. And eventually for me, what it got to is they prescribed me a low dose of antidepressants because it destimulated the nerves in my arms. And their reasoning was, well, if you can't feel it, then you'll be fine, which completely freaked me out. Yeah. And similar to you, like a friend of mine said, oh, you should go and see this person. He was a Chinese doctor. And I remember he was the first person that I sat through. The first session was maybe like a 2-hour session. We had a 1-hour Q&A. And what I now can recognize was he was essentially analyzing the stress levels within my body in all the different ways. Like, how do you sleep? What do you eat? How do you exercise? What's your state of being? And and then we got to work on essentially calming my whole system down, which he did with like Chinese herbs. He did with acupuncture. He did with massage, and at the time he did with Reiki as well, which I'm not necessarily keen on now, but well, I'm not keen on now, but the whole process was about calming my system down, and how I was having, and actually if I reflect on what my state of being was at that time, I would probably go into work at 8 o'clock in the morning and be there till 8 o'clock at night, working like a maniac, typing away on a laptop for 12 hours. Like I was probably wouldn't have recognized it at the time, but probably quite highly stressed.
Well, that's the thing. Everything becomes normal at some point. Someone else might look at you like, Jesus Christ, how do you live with all that stress? You're like, what stress?
Yeah.
You know, the fish doesn't know it's surrounded by water because it's all there is.
Yeah. So then,
so what you said about what you're basically saying is that very, very often the current system, and I say system, not people, but the current system fails people in pain with persistent pain. That no matter how many people you see, is still there. And it's because of these important questions that are not being asked. Why? Why? Just keep asking why, and eventually, and it might be a long journey, but eventually you will find the answer. So if someone goes to see someone for knee pain, let's say, I can't tell you how many stories I hear where they're told their glutes are weak. So there you could say, so even if that was true, if we just assume that was true now, why don't we ask, well, but why is the left glute weak and not the right glute? And if you ask that someone, and there's no further investigation to that question, yeah, then maybe you're not going to find that answer. Why the left, not the right? And then you very quickly end up at the bones, and you need to understand, why is it weak? Could it be that it just doesn't have the opportunity? Because muscles are pretty dumb. They only work if they have to. And that's because your body's just trying to conserve as much energy as it can. If a muscle is not asked to work, it's not going to work. What makes the muscle work? Well, it's joint motion. So you can check that. Can you do this on your left side? Can you do it on your right side? Can you do it in this way? Can you do it in that way? Well, why can't you do it in this way on this side? So you keep asking, why?
Right. So I was going to, the big question is, why does the body stop moving, right?
Yeah, that's a big question.
But, you know, it extrapolates from that. So can you do this on the left? Can you do this on the right? If you can't do this on the right, why can't you do it on the right? So why does the body stop moving? Dom, why does the body stop moving?
Well, life and all those experiences in your life plays into that. If we go back to your example, if you have an injury somewhere, maybe the structure physically cannot move anymore due to that injury. Maybe it's being protected by the nervous system in an attempt to be safe, because everything is kind of mapped in your brain. Every body part is mapped in your brain. So if you move, whether you walk or you do whatever, your brain kind of predicts what's going to happen. Now, if you want an accurate prediction, you make use of all the information that you can get. One piece of information can be previous injury, resultant pain, and, well, as I said, the structure might not actually be able to do it due to the injury, short term. Long term, this can become the default because your brain, your body, they just adapt constantly.
And it seems to be, one doesn't even realize that they're not moving in that way.
Exactly, because it becomes normal, and this is what's so important to me when I work with people. I want them to actually look at this, say, oh yeah, actually it feels quite similar left to right, but here on the video it's so different. And from there you can start to work through and basically bring back what's missing, is what we say, so that ultimately you restore ease in your body. The more options of movement you have in your body, the easier everything is going to be. If you have to rely on doing one thing all the time in the same way, because there's just no other way for your body to move, that area might start to complain at some point. Yeah, so the question is not necessarily what's wrong with the area where I feel my pain, but what else is not actually joining in to make this body move like a team, where you have teamwork, where all muscles work together with one big goal to make you move in the safest and most efficient, most energy conserving way.
In doing Irene's course, she talked about there being 3 factors that would lead to this. One being, childhood trauma, whatever that may be. With and what blows my mind is the size of the spectrum on that. Yes, it could be physical abuse, but it could also just be that your dad wasn't there for a period of time, every weekend, and the way that the child interprets that. So there was childhood events. The second one was accidents and general events in one's life. So that could be being knocked off your bike, or being in a car crash, or being hit in the street, or even having someone scream at you and your state kind of going into a shutdown from that. And then the third was chronic stress. So we just kind of explained how the experience I had was very much chronic stress. And I'm reminded of yours, of a story you told me when, I think a couple of years ago, you fell off a bike and you were aware enough to know that your knee wasn't moving correctly. And rather than, you did the classic kind of, I'll test this one out on myself. And obviously you should explain it, but just to kind of give an example of just this one, just to give an example, really.
Yeah, so it's actually, there are 2 interesting parts to that story. I'm not sure if I told you one of them. When I was on my bike and I was hit by that car, I was overcome by rage that I did not know I had in me.
You didn't tell me this part.
No. So that's an interesting aspect of that. Wow, like actually a physical impact to your body. What can this actually unleash kind of emotionally? I didn't punch the guy. I just want to make sure. I didn't punch it, but I was very close. I was very close.
So what happened? You were cycling down the street and a car hit you?
Yeah. So, but then with the knee thing, well, I did fall into my knee and my elbow. And I was very aware because of this work that I do, what was happening, what was not happening. But I was just curious. I just wanted to know, okay, I've got this deficit in potential here at my knee at the moment. Let's just see what my body overall does with it. And it was amazing.
When you say deficit in potential, you mean as in your knee is now not moving in the way that it could?
That it could, yeah. And it could.
It's now limited in its movement because of the accident.
Yeah, exactly.
So you've had like a micro injury or trauma to the knee, and now it's not moving in the way that it could. So back to the point of why isn't the body moving? It's not, in this case, it's not moving because you've been knocked off your bike and you've been caused an injury.
Yeah, there was an actual physical event, a physical trauma to the knee. But I'm just generally curious. So rather than going, oh shit, my knee doesn't move now, I want to I want to change that. I just said, well, this is actually an opportunity for me to learn a lot. Because if that knee isn't moving, well, the knee is made up of my shin and my femur. But my femur goes all the way into my hip, my pelvis. My pelvis, however, is then connected to my spine. My spine goes to my neck, to my shoulders, my shoulder blades, and so on and so on and so on. So rather than just jumping to a fix, if you want to call it that, which I don't like as a word anyway, I just wanted to say, oh, I wonder what my body makes of this now. And it's just a nice opportunity to truly get to know how your system works. And the plateau, like we said at the beginning, it can actually be a similar place. It's like, okay, I'm here now. And how do I navigate this space where I am right now?
So what happens with the fact that your knee wasn't moving correctly? What effects did that have on your body?
Well, it's similar to this idea of the feet and the foundation with the house. Well, you stand on your legs too. So if your left knee is in a place where your right knee is not, you have to navigate your body on top of that. So it will affect how freely you can bend your spine. It will affect how freely you can turn your spine, your neck, how freely you can take an arm up by your side or overhead. Because it's just this big Jenga tower that we're dealing with, our bones. So how you place the individual blocks, it limits how you can then place the next blocks the further you play. We could go really specific with this. I mean, if you can't rotate your femur left, you can't turn your pelvis left, you might struggle to turn your spine the other way, and so on. Coming out of that leg was actually quite difficult for a little while.
Did you say it affected? Am I making this up? That it gave you a bunion or a corn or something?
That as well, yeah, a bunion. So my big toe on the left started to kind of deviate out to the side. But that again, you can actually.
So because you couldn't move your left knee, it's then affecting your foot, and so now your toes moving out to the wrong side, or moving out to the side, which is causing you a bunion.
So the bunion is just a shape. So a bunion is just a toe that's deviated out to the side. And you can think of this as a rotational movement. So if you look down onto a foot with a bunion, that toe is kind of rotated out, pointing to the left on the left foot. Yeah. It's like rotated left.
Yeah.
Well, after that accident, I had no more rotation in my knee initially. So if you don't, this is maybe a nice way to explain movement overall. If you don't have rotation somewhere, you will find it in excess somewhere else. Bunions are that.
So the body's compensating.
Yeah. So generally you can see movement like you have a few empty cups, and then you have a big bottle of water. The bottle of water represents a movement that you do. So you take a footstep or you throw a ball, whatever movement you do. That water has to be distributed into these cups or glasses, empty glasses. Each glass represents a joint. So if I now leave one joint empty, I still have to carry out a movement that's in that bottle. But I can't fill this now in my case, this knee cup anymore, which means I have to fill others more. Otherwise, I'm not going to move. So it's really, really clever. And that's what I want people to appreciate, just how clever this is. This happens completely unconsciously. If a joint doesn't move, another one will move more. And of course,
if you have no knowledge of this is what your body's going to do, then all of a sudden you end up with these weird pains.
Exactly.
Because you don't realize your body's compensating.
It's finding a strategy. Again, compensating, yes, it's kind of compensating, but it has this negative connotation. I think actually it's something to appreciate. It's like, wow.
Yeah, well, I think
such a clever strategy.
Yeah, well, I think this actually kind of goes, the question I was going to ask you is like, so what's the motivator for the knee not moving? Well, the body, well, tell me if I'm correct here, the body doesn't think it's safe. It still needs to go through that movement, so it finds the movement somewhere else. So actually, it's just protecting itself.
That's definitely a possibility. In my case, there was actually the accident caused some jarring between the bones, so I had to sort that out. But protection, yeah, definitely. Which is why when I work with people and we get into the areas that kind of matter, very often people say, "Oh, this feels really vulnerable," because this area might not have moved in an attempt to be safe. And we want to make it safe. That's ultimately the goal. So you want to show that, okay, there is the past, this is the present that was shaped by the past, but we want to move on from that.
Right. So just for for the sake of people listening, connecting this back to the previous conversation with Irene, and just do a very quick recap. We kind of gave the 101 about the nervous system, the autonomic nervous system being split into parasympathetic and sympathetic, and the parasympathetic being split into ventral and dorsal. And that because of these three factors that we previously mentioned, the childhood events, accidents, and other events which happen during lifetime and chronic stress, you can get stuck into a certain state, into the sympathetic state, or into a dorsal state. So like a fight or flight state, or a freeze state. For me, I got stuck into, or I spent most of my time in a high alert sympathetic state. Like I walk into buildings and I know where the door is, like or I'm walking down the street and I've clocked the person 100 yards away, like I know what they're doing, like I'm kind of always alert, because that's what feels safe to me. Like
Exactly.
I find
I was
safe.
going to ask that, but why do you do it?
Because
you want to be.
Yeah, because I don't want to be trapped.
Yeah.
Like the idea of potholing is the most terrifying thing in the world to me. Like actually being trapped and not being able to escape and not being able to run. And and this has been a big thing for you and I. I mentioned in the last one that I always was very good at running when I was a child, but I hated it. Like I physically hated running. I was emotionally and from a nervous system perspective always ready to run, but like with the work that we've done and the work that I've been doing with Irene, all of a sudden, my body, my left knee had stopped me from running for many years. All of a sudden, as I've started to do all this work and started to kind of ease myself out of being highly alert and ready to physically run all the time, or mentally and emotionally running, I've actually gained the capacity to physically run again. And
you might want to say what you did a few weeks ago.
yeah. And so like, at the beginning of the year, like I couldn't run. And a couple of weeks ago, I ran a marathon, like, and it was no big deal. It's just I just kind of went out and did it, and I enjoyed it so much.
Yeah.
Like so my nervous system was kind of, I was stuck in this hyper alert state. And I've kind of, as I've, because that's what felt safe to me. And as I've kind of beyond intellectually recognizing that that's perhaps not safe, as in like, I don't need to be in a hyper alert state to always be safe. As I've managed to ease my way out of that and become unstuck from it, in a way, bring more movement back to other areas of my life.
Yeah, and to your body, because your alertness, this tension, was really focused for you around your pelvis. So we can relate this back to the bones now.
Yeah.
Okay, if I am holding onto my pelvis, I restrict motion due to the nervous system side that you explained. You can work on your pelvis all day long. If that's what's holding it in one place, then you require another compensation, another strategy to move something else. So your the mechanics of your knee are reliant on the movement of your pelvis. And you can follow this just bone by bone, because at your knee, you have the end of your thigh bone, but that's a continuous bone that runs all the way up into your hip. And that's the pelvis. So if you hold your pelvis, does this femur actually have the freedom that it needs? Or does it start to hurt?
What's always been interesting for me is just not having the awareness of like what's not moving properly, and also sometimes being able to do them. So not having the maybe just start there. I didn't realize that I wasn't moving in a way that I needed to move, and that I was compensating in different ways, not in a negative way. Like I was moving around what wasn't moving. Like I had no idea. Like, so in your example, you fell off the bike, you understood what was happening.
Yeah.
You let it play out. The knee wasn't rotating, so then your foot was rotating, and it emerged into a bunion. You understood that process, and then you were able to apply the corrective exercises to bring the movement back into your knee, and then the bunion disappears. Like you had the full knowledge of doing that.
Yeah.
You knew that your body was so if I would have fallen off the bike, I would have had a sore knee. I wouldn't have had the realization that my knee wasn't rotating correctly. I would have ended up with a bunion, and I'd come to see you because, hey Dom, I've got a bunion in my foot. Do you know what I mean? Like you have the knowledge and the awareness of doing that. And so even though we've been working together for so many years at this point, 3 years at this point, or 5 years on and off, I still turn up and I have no idea that my body's not or my body's moving around what's not moving.
Yeah.
In the same way that for many years I didn't realize I was living in a high alert state. Like I could kind of tell you, well, I just kind of need to, I need to know where the door is, but I didn't know that I was kind of necessarily doing that.
But that's exactly it. So this idea, so this internal sense of where your body is and what your body feels like. It's called proprioception. It's really interesting to see how the brain is actually affected by trauma and stress. So trauma kind of robs people of this inner map of knowing where they are. So if you live in this high vigilance state, yeah, you're not used to actually knowing what's going on. Now with the knowledge part, that's then also relevant because you might not be able to get to the point where you can kind of figure it out unless you diffuse this smoke alarm, so that the proprioception can actually come back and you realize, oh yeah, this is what's happening on this side, and that's what's happening on the other side. And once you're there, it's a really clear map. Our bones have a certain shape, and those shapes dictate how the joints can move. And then it's a yes or no answer. Is it moving in this way? Yes or no? Why not?
It's quite practical in that sense.
And it's actually a lot simpler than people might think.
Right.
So if we stick to the pelvis, it can tilt forward, it can tilt forwards, it can tilt back, it can turn left, it can turn right, it can shift left, it can shift right, it can hike left, it can hike right. That's it.
So presumably if I turned up and I said I've got a hip problem, you would put me through those 6 movement tests. Can you shift left? Yeah. Can you shift right? Can you hike left? Can you so on and so forth. And by seeing which one I couldn't do or which ones I couldn't do, that's the beginning of the puzzle.
Exactly. And from there, you if you do come with a hip problem, you can already start to understand the hip problem. Or actually, if I can't go there, it means I'm stuck on the other side. Where's the pain?
Mm-hmm.
And then the history kind of plays into that puzzle in this journey of following the breadcrumbs. And sometimes it can be really, really obvious also to people. And many people just kind of know it. So you might have a problem on your right hip. And then you have all the treatments on your right hip and all the scans. And I think it's, get it scanned if you're worried that something's going on. But then again, you could say, well, but why is it damaged in this way that you tell me it is? And people kind of know because they tell me, it's like, but you know what? I have all these injuries on my left leg. So they know, but no one's listening to them.
Yeah.
And then you can actually bring that to life by having this map. What I just said for the pelvis, all these different movements, it's the same. Your spine should be able to bend left and right, turn left and right, and flex and extend. And then you have combinations of that, but that's it. Question is, can it do that or can it not do that? Well, why not? If you can't do it on one side, it will affect how you can move from one leg to the other. So there is some real simplicity in that, but it's difficult to keep the distance and say, well, this is what should be there in anybody. I can't do this. And then you might get to work already and say, well, can we actually just teach the structure to do that? Because maybe just hasn't done this in a few years. And once you relearn it, things already become easier. Or you follow the breadcrumbs, because then you can relate it to all these other bones. If I can't get my pelvis to the right, or your right ankle needs to do something, or your right foot needs to do something in order to allow this pelvis to come there. You can just follow the chain. And then you end up at the foot. Well, at the foot, there are two desired possible movements, pronation and supination. Can your foot do that? Yes or no? Oh, it can't do that. Why not? Oh, yeah, I did sprain that ankle. So suddenly a hip problem or neck problem, like in my case, is no longer a hip or neck problem, but actually a foot problem. And you can test that. If you identify a movement from this map, what Gary calls the flow motion model, if you find, actually I can't do that, or it hurts when I do that, you can test it and follow the map. Okay, when this movement happens in gait, this should happen at the foot. So what if we actually just quickly change the foot and then retest? So if there is a relationship there, you will see a change, which is why I saw a change with my neck. It's not guesswork. You just need to know how to navigate the map, and you might need to find someone to help you with that.
How many different movements did he map?
Well, so he split the gait cycle into different phases. There are phases he teaches, and then there are kind of phases in between that he doesn't teach. But you have 5 phases. So you have when your heel strikes the ground, when your foot is fully on the ground and pronates, when you're in then single leg stance, when you start to transition your way to the other leg, and then finally when you push off that leg. So in those phases, which only takes between 0.6 and 0.8 seconds, every bone on both legs, both shoulders, pelvis, the ribcage, everything moves from one place to the opposite place and back in 3 dimensions, which is, it's a lot. If when you learn it, you kind of fill in a sheet, like and kind of like a printed Excel sheet with lots and lots of boxes. I forgot how many boxes, like over 200 something boxes, where you basically map, okay, when my foot strikes the ground, I need this to happen in my toes, my forefoot, my rear foot, my ankle, my knee, my hip, and so on and so on and so on, in 3 dimensions. and it transitions forwards to the ground, my body moves on top of this foot and it changes. And from there it changes as you continue the footstep all the way to the next time you do go to that foot. So it's really, when it happens, it's beautiful. It's beautiful to watch. It's graceful because it's efficient. If you go to a park and you see people and how effortful their walk is, because they don't tick many of those boxes and they have to find another way to do it. But this map, this flow motion model is informed by the shapes of the bones. It's very real. It's truth. There's truth in that. It's not made up. Every bone can be tracked. But some bones might not move. And then the whole system has to deal with that and find another way around that. And then you accumulate. Sorry to interrupt. Then you accumulate that, going back to your question, well, why does the body stop moving? I said, well, life. Well, because we all accumulate stuff. It's not just physical injuries. It's, you can go all the way back to the development of when you were a newborn. How did you develop? Stresses can come into that. Sports, practices, lifestyle habits, hobbies. Your body just gets used to whatever you do with it. So if you start ballet at the age of 3, you might find it very difficult to leave those positions again if you've been practicing it for many, many years at that young age.
It becomes it's repetition, isn't it?
It's all repetition, which is how we also bring it back. Well, okay, if this is the case now, and this is what's missing, how do we get it back? Repetition, work. Which is also something that is important to mention. And I think it's kind of clear now in your case and kind of our history together. It requires work. This is not a okay, fix me kind of thing. This is your body. This is your inquiry. What you do with your body is your choice. No one else's. Now I can hopefully help you inform where you can take it and inform you about other ways, just to shine light where this is possible as well. And if you show your body that, you show your brain that, your nervous system will eventually choose if it deems it safe, efficient, and energy conserving to do that.
When you bring movement back to these areas, so I would say that we were talking, well, I was asking you, like, how would you describe your work? And you pin that back at me saying, well, how would you describe my work, Chris?
Yeah.
to which I replied, well, your work brings awareness and movement back to these areas that have become stuck. You're looking deep, like you're thinking deeply there. Is that correct? So I would say that you help me when I come to you and say, hey, this is what's going on. You help me to figure out where I am not moving correctly in my body. So you're helping me
that as well. Sorry to interrupt, but this moving correctly, what if we just ditch that? This right and wrong thinking of actually saying, well, this is how you move. But there are other ways to move. Choose which one is the best.
Sure. But then that's the best one determines where your body's at, because it's always choosing the best one.
Exactly. That's the point, which is how we can actually start to see pain and the problem in a completely different light, not with blame, but actually with appreciation. It's like, oh yeah,
yeah, the body's
this,
doing an amazing thing. It's a lot. Yeah,
not this bloody knee, but this, wow, I wish I could help that knee. Yeah, we can.
there must be an optimum way to move though.
Well, that's it's the holy grail.
Is there anyone that moves in the optimum way?
If we talk about walking, well, yes, there is one most efficient way. But will you ever achieve that? I don't know, because you have your history and also your current life. But what you can do is bring back options. People feel stuck because they've run out of options. And their body feels stuck because it has run out of options. Well, let's actually recreate options. And let's do it in a structured way. Use that map. Use the potential that is there in our bones. Find out what we can and can't do. Bring it back and just reorganize the whole system and let it choose. If you think about other movements, other than gait, well, there as well, your body will make use of what it has available and what it deems safe, even if it hurts.
Right. That's an interesting paradox.
I know, but if you throw a ball and your shoulder hurts when you throw a ball, what if that body doesn't actually have the rib cage and the spine to get some power behind that ball, because the rib cage and the spine are stuck in a place that doesn't allow the shoulder to go through its, well, mechanical requirements in order to throw that ball. Shoulder blade should slide, the shoulder should internally, externally rotate, and so on and so on and so on. But it does that on the base of the rib cage, and the rib cage is the spine. So if your spine is stuck, it's not a shoulder problem. Your body will still throw, making use of what's available. And it might be the safest thing or the only thing possible to not move that spine, but that now limits how well your shoulder can move. Does that make sense?
Yeah. What comes to mind is just just revisiting this concept that the body's always doing the best thing for you. Like I've had conversations where people are like, my body's useless, my body won't do this, my body won't do that, and it's like whenever I'm having those conversations, you can almost feel the heaviness in the air. It's that's the way they're talking to themselves and talking to their body, and like what they're then inspiring in their body and how they're shutting their body down even further. And it's like no, like it's this isn't forever. Like your body's just doing what it needs to do right now in order to protect you, in order to make you to be as safe as it possibly can be. Like it's not intentionally fucking you up.
It's always operated at its available 100%. But can we start to shift where that 100% is?
Yeah.
So what you say about language is a really, really important point. Now you can ask questions and you can ask the same question many different ways. You can ask, why is that knee hurting? 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 It's the same question, but the answers will be very different depending on which way of asking it you choose.
Yeah, you talked to me a lot about curiosity, and like some of those, the way that the intonation of some of those questions is a curious question, and the intonation of some of those questions is a blame question.
Yeah.
Like like it's not, I was going to say it's subtle, but it's not, that's not actually subtle at all. It's very obvious, but it can very easily be missed. I've definitely gone through that spectrum of intonations with my questions of my body and been exasperated by it.
Yeah, but it makes a real difference to your whole approach to it. Do you actually want to find liberation, or do you want to go deeper into this world of blame and hate, or do you actually just want to drop it, say, what can I do to help that structure?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that's a whole process that you have to go through to get to. I couldn't even tell you what the process is, because I imagine it's very different for every single person.
Oh yeah, totally. Now you've got all this awareness with the nervous system. Asking this, why does that knee hurt? When you ask a question like that, you will actually notice a difference in your body, as opposed to, why does that knee hurt? There's a softness to it, and that softness can actually allow you to be clear on your approach to solving this issue. Whereas the first question, why is this knee hurting? And you ramp up your fight or flight, even just in that question. And that informs your approach to it. Well, ask yourself, does it actually then set the stage for that liberation and that help, or for more shutting down? I was going to say something else about that. It's this idea of acceptance. There's a difference between acceptance and resignation. That as well is a big difference. If you actually have come to a point where nothing has worked, do you accept that whatever you have tried has not worked, or do you resign to that fact? You can accept it and say, but maybe there's something else that I just haven't seen before. If you resign, that's it. That informs your future approach. And then that's, it's a question that everyone has to ask themselves. Do I want this to change? Why do I want it to change?
Yeah, perhaps you don't want it to change.
Perhaps you don't want it to change.
You don't really, on the surface, you're raging about the fact you want it to change, but on that deeper level, the unconscious level, you don't actually want it to change. It's safer on a more unconscious level for it not to change.
Yeah. Because whatever you need to deal with can actually be uncomfortable.
I would say what it triggers in me is so we've spent, when I first came to see you in 2018, we spent on off 5 years working. Like it's a gentle you have to approach it quite gently, and with a lot of grace and with patience. And we talked about these plateaus in quotation marks. Actually, for me, part of that is just, like I said, I couldn't have a breakthrough every month. Like it would break me actually to have a breakthrough every month. Like I have to have these periods of time where I'm like, okay, that was a big experience, and I can't even necessarily articulate that in a clear manner, the experience that I just had. But I recognize it on a different level, on a deeper level, that there's a that something's happened, and I just need a bit of time to kind of process that and let that come through. We had an experience at the beginning of the year where so a lot of this year has been working on my pelvis. I hold a lot of tension in my pelvis. Haven't actually figured out why I hold all this tension in my pelvis. one of the exercises we were doing was I was leaning against a wall, and all I had to do was all I had to do was tilt my pelvis forward and let my lower back touch the wall, and I couldn't do it. Like I just could not do it, and I was increasingly getting frustrated and angry about it, and I got to a point where I basically just kind of had a I broke down in tears. Like I could, like, and I remember saying, she's like, I can make my lower back touch the wall. That's not a problem. Like I can physically force my lower back to touch the wall, but I really just can't make it do it anymore. Like I couldn't. It was emotionally, it was beyond me to force my lower back to touch the wall. Like I didn't want to rotate my pelvis for my lower back to touch the wall. It wasn't a case of I couldn't do it. I just didn't want to do it. There was something like emotional for me in doing it. Like in that, like, I just don't want to force this stuff anymore. Like if it doesn't want to touch the wall,
that's the point. You shouldn't have to.
Absolutely. And so it was like, if it doesn't want to touch the wall, it's okay. Like it's okay for my, talking to my lower back, it's okay. If you don't want to touch the wall, it's okay. Don't worry about it. Like, there's another time, another day, whatever. And that in itself was a breakthrough for me, that I was like, I wasn't ticking a box. Yes, Dom, I can do this. Yes, I can do this. Yes, I can do this. Because in my head, I'm equating being able to do all these movements with achievement, And so for me, it was, and that was kind of quite a big emotional moment for me. And I was, and that was kind of, I needed a break from it after that. Like I just couldn't, like, I remember texting you a week later saying, hey, by the way, I can touch my back to the wall, like no big deal.
I was just going to say that, exactly. So you had this moment of just not being able to and actually forcing it. And whenever you have to force something, it kind of says you can't do it.
Yeah, big life lesson that.
You actually, again, this goes back to this idea of liberation. Do you force something into a place, or do you let it go freely? Do you allow it to go into a place? But there's trust in that. You need to trust when you just let it go, when you allow it to go, instead of when you force it and you're still kind of holding on to it.
Yeah.
And as you say, it was very emotional for you. And a week later, whatever came up, that it did something to you, and suddenly you could allow it. It's pretty amazing.
Do you remember also, so like a month ago I ran a marathon. Maybe like 3 months ago, I'd gone from not being able to run, I'd gone from, had this pain in my left knee. We worked out that I'm holding a lot of tension in my pelvis, and because my pelvis isn't moving, it's moving in a manner that's not allowing my knee to move. I was going to use the word because my pelvis isn't moving correctly. It's not allowing my knee to move properly. I was not allowing my knee to move in a way that it's not causing me pain, but we got it. I managed to release a lot of tension. My running practice had actually become less about running and almost, I hate this phrase, but almost like a mindful meditation. I would go out and run, and I'd actually spend my entire time focused on my pelvis, letting, trying to be aware of when it would start to tense and when it would start. And then once I recognized that, letting go of the tension. And if my knee would start to hurt on a run, I'd know that I had lost my focus and my pelvis, and that I brought a lot of tension back to it, and I just needed to let go of the tension, and then the pain would go. But I kind of hit this plateau again at about running about 5 miles. And I remember being on a call, you saying, hey, perhaps this is it. Perhaps I can only run 5 miles. Like I keep trying to run further than 5 miles, and I can't run further than 5 miles without this pain. And there was, to begin with, it was almost a resignation of it. Fuck, like I guess that's it. I guess my body can't do any more than 5 miles. And then there was more of an acceptance of it. And we had a conversation saying, okay, well, we can continue to be curious. We can continue to see what comes up, and we can continue to, on these monthly sessions, to work this. And within like 2 months, I'd run a marathon. completely, I'd reframe this resignation to acceptance and back into curiosity, and that had kind of unlocked this whole other layer for me. And again, going back to the conversation of being quite gentle and patient with oneself, like you wouldn't chastise a child for not being able to pick up a skill immediately.
Yeah, there's a really interesting. Sorry, go on.
I was going to say, but in adulthood, like I will chastise myself immediately for not being amazing at something. Having picked up, a musical instrument, why am I not incredible at it within 3 months?
Yeah. There's a really, really interesting experiment that they did with either rats or mice, doesn't matter, where they had a rat in a little room or a little box, and in the corner of that box there was a hamster wheel. So that rat or mouse had the choice to exercise. It could rest, it could eat, it could exercise, it would do whatever. And they had a second mouse in a box right next to it, but that second mouse was trapped in the hamster wheel. And that hamster wheel was connected to the first mouse's hamster wheel, which meant when mouse number 1 chose to exercise, mouse number 2 had to exercise. And it's super interesting. Basically, mouse number 1, with a choice to do so, everything that we associate with the benefits of exercise, was measurable. Like heart pressure, blood pressure improved, and stress hormones went down, and everything, lost fat, and so on and so on. Everything, which is why we exercise. The second mouse, who didn't have the choice, got the exact same amount of exercise. None of that happened. And stress hormones went through the roof that actually caused a breakdown in certain systems. So this is an interesting question for people. Am I doing something because I think I have to, because I should, or is it because I want to do it? This applies to anything.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, because I'm the guinea pig in this scenario, like I definitely engage in a lot of behaviors that because I have to, or I've told myself I have to, as opposed to choosing to.
Yeah. So even if you have, so overall, I think you're really starting to see the nuances between that, the subtleties, when you do things because you want to, and when you do things because you think you have to or should. But also, if you think about your homework, how you approach your homework will also make a difference in what you actually get out of it.
And okay, so maybe just explain the homework.
Yeah, so I send people homework that they have to, but where the invitation is to continue doing these, for the most part, movements in between our sessions.
And so maybe just to quickly explain, so in our case, we work across Zoom. So one of the benefits of that has been that you can't just point to my knee and say your knee's not moving properly. Like it's more like I have to, if it was my knee, for example, like I'm more kind of in tune with what's going on. Like it might be a little bit of a slower take up for me, but it's kind of, forcing, and maybe that's not the correct word. It's allowing me the opportunity to feel into my body and to understand that the issue is where it is.
Exactly.
And then
understand it. That's the big difference.
Right. And so then you will advise me on some movements that we will work on throughout the session. Can I get into this position? Can I not get into this position, or so on and so forth? And then at the end of our session, you will send me a series of movements that build on what we've been doing in that session, and invite me, if I would like to, practice these movements on a daily basis. And and then we'll reconvene in a month, a month later. Sometimes I will have a month where I do those movements every single day, and then other times I'll have months where I just don't get around to them because of life, or I don't want to do them. I've had occasions where I just don't want to do this. This is too much.
Yeah.
Like my capacity, like I'm at full capacity, and I just can't. I can't. The same as what I was just saying. Like I know that I can make myself do these. Like I can make my lower back go against the wall, or I can choose not to do them because this is actually what I feel like right now. And then that, even for me, just goes back into the grace conversation of saying, well, or of saying, okay, well, I'm not trying to, change everything in a 1 month period. Like I'm dedicated to this work, and if this takes 6 months instead of 2 months, that's okay. Like it's I'm kind of going at a speed that I can go at, as opposed to
you're
forcing
really
myself.
describing then is that you are really getting to know your body, your system, its capacities. If you just don't want to do something, well, you could ask yourself, why not? If you don't want to, I wonder why.
Mm-hmm.
But it could be that, yeah, maybe you just reach your capacity at that time. And now, because if you're really honest about these things that we try to do here, we try to get back what's missing, where the map in your brain is pretty smudged. It's not a clear image, so to say. So it requires a lot of brain power. If you don't have that brain power available, you would not get much out of that movement, because you would just move in the exact same as you've always done, rather than actually discovering new opportunities, new potential. But it's part of that process to know yourself to that level, which is why it's so amazing to work with you for this long time, because I can see that transition, actually, that honesty.
So just to relate this back to the autonomic nervous system, the breakdown, the sympathetic, the parasympathetic, and me saying, well, I recognize that probably spend most of my time, or I was spending most of my time in this hypervigilant state, which for me just I think of a checklist. These are the things I have to do today. Like I have to tick this, tick this, tick this, tick this, tick this, which should be like, I've got these exercises to do today that Dom sent me, and it's 30 days to our next session. I have to do these for 30 days. And that's how I would have been at a certain point. As I've kind of more come out of that sympathetic dominant state into more of a kind of ventral state. So ventral being kind of like connection and engagement with the environment, and creativity and a state of learning. Like I've been able to do that and sort of say, in fact, the past couple of days, like you don't know this yet, but I did a crazy series of workouts last week, and my body has been utterly exhausted, like an exhaustion that I haven't really experienced probably ever, actually. Like it wasn't so much I had DOMs after I came out, 2 or 3 days after the gym. Like I had DOMs the moment I walked out of the gym, and I've had like 4 days of just being utterly wiped out. In that hypervigilant state, I've been like, well, I just need to force my way through getting these exercises done. And now in the state that I'm in presently, I'm like, I just need a break. Like I need not to kind of tax myself in a way that, even though these are really kind of gentle, small exercises and probably only take 10 minutes, like I can't, like I just need to go to bed. I just need to rest. I need to, go and lay in a bath for an hour. Like just kind of being more in tune with what actually my needs in this moment are.
Yeah.
Again, that kind of more graceful state of being.
Yeah. So,
and then the teacher doesn't, bust me for not doing my homework at the end of the next time I see him.
No, because as I said, I think there's always a valid reason. And
But I
that
think that's
reason,
I think that's one of your attributes as well, though. And perhaps it's an attribute that you can't not have doing the work that you do. It's not like, well, why didn't you do it over the past month? It's like, okay, cool. This, acceptance of like, okay, this is who you are, this is where you're at, this is what you're going through. This is, I'm here to support you. I'm not here to, hammer you to do this. I'm not trying to push you through this and get you through it. It's like, God, it's quite an amazing skill actually to be able to be, I recognize in you, for you to be able to turn up like that.
so as I said, I think there is a reason somewhere why someone doesn't do homework. You have come to a place where you recognize, actually, you know what? I just need to rest. Because you started to experience more of your kind of the full experience of yourself. You've had this incredible challenge with these crazy workouts, and you've gone the other way to say, okay, now I rest. This is basically how bones move. They move from one side to the other side. Very often, we just stuck in a very small kind of range of this potential that we have. This goes for bones. This goes for what we just discussed. Goes for, if you do want to take it back to kind of the nervous system and the history of that nervous system, it goes back to emotions. And I think we talked about this briefly. This
sorry, go on.
Being like, do you actually know what happiness is like if you're never sad? Or do you need that reference point? And vice versa. But then why do I not push you? Well, because I recognize that you, first of all, because I recognize you are a human being with a life. And also, to be completely honest, because it's your choice, not mine. I could sit here and be frustrated. Oh, Chris didn't do his homework. Chris didn't do his homework, blah, blah, blah. It wouldn't help neither of us. I would feel miserable. You would probably feel miserable if I told you off. You probably wouldn't be working with me anymore.
Yeah.
Because I think we both actually appreciate that this is just a process that kind of ebbs and flows.
Which again, because we've been doing it for a long period of time now, like it's easy to recognize that, right, with a long period of time reflecting back on, as opposed to say 2 months. You can see the ebbs and the flows. Like it's almost like you can trust it.
That's the whole point. Actually, just trusting yourself, your system, your body, that it kind of knows what's best at the moment.
You said to me when we were talking prior to this, you said the body's always communicating with you. It's always giving you the truth, always doing what is safe.
Yeah. That's the summary of this conversation.
Okay, we're done. No, I'm joking.
No, it's the body.
I think could be quite a hard thing to accept. I totally accept that. Like I understand it in a way that I wouldn't have understood it 5 years ago, and because of all the work I've been doing with it, not just the practical. I would say not just the practical work I've been doing about the nervous system, but also the theory. Learning the theory has been actually a tremendous help for me. Like for me personally, I have the need to intellectually understand as well as physically experience. Like it really annoys me, but I'm the type of person that goes into an art gallery and reads the plaque next to the painting before I look at the painting. It's always really annoyed me, like, why do I have to do that? But I do. But so the practical as well as the theory side has always been really it's important for me. But I think I can imagine that for some people it would be hard to accept that the body's always giving you the truth. And I guess that's that thing of like, well, the body's being used, my body's useless. I'm not saying that about my body. When I've heard those conversations, it's like, well, the body's being truthful with you, it's telling you where you're at.
Well, but it's, it goes back to, well, how do you approach this whole process? People don't don't come to me a week after something starts hurting. I'm kind of at the end of the line.
The breakdown phase. Like, I can't go with this anymore.
Where they just know where the truth is somewhere, and I just haven't been able to find it. So if we go back, just to keep it simple, back to this pelvis conversation. This is what a pelvis should be able to do. That's what its shape is kind of designed for. We can check a movement on the left. Can you hike it on the left? Can you hike it on the right? And some people say, yeah, can do that. Okay, but how are you doing it? How are you actually navigating that? What are the differences? What are the subtleties? And what are the implications of those subtleties? And sometimes it's just glaringly obvious, you just can't do it. But a person might still say, I can do it. Because they might not accept the truth. Whether it's for themselves or when they speak with me, I don't know. But then I show them a picture, I say, look, we have it here. This is your left side, this is your right side. And then there's, and then that becomes a choice. Okay, do I now want to work with what I see? Because now there's no denying. Or do you choose not to? And if someone chooses not to, again, I think there's probably a reason within that.
The pictures are wild because, again, in our experience, at a certain point, I was taking photographs of my back for you. Or in fact, yeah, my entire back, my back, my pelvis, the back of my legs. And it was wild to see that, because obviously I don't see that view. And I could see the pelvis, the hikes in the pelvis, and and even in my my shoulder blades, and obviously when you look at it, my back, you can you see it because you're actually looking at it, whereas you had never had that perspective. But that applied to all the different areas of the body. Like, I don't have the 20 yard away looking at me objectively perspective, unless of course I'm in a mirror. But even then,
taking a photo can be quite eye-opening for people, because it does create that distance, which is what might be necessary initially to actually say, okay, this is me. It's like that, like I said, the fish doesn't know it's in water because it's just surrounded by water. It's just the way it is. But then you create some distance by taking a photo, and it's like, oh, wow. This is what it looks like. That's not what I felt. But could this play into why I feel so shit?
Yeah.
If you look at someone's game, it's just I have a case that just came to mind with right knee pain, and I showed him all of his phases of gait. So when he goes into his right foot, into blah blah blah, into the left foot, so basically different pictures. And it's pretty amazing to see how no matter which leg he's actually putting forward, he somehow still manages to keep weight in this right leg. So, but this is someone who was about to have surgery for that right knee.
Whoa.
And this happens all the time. People have surgery without actually, it goes back to the beginning, without asking why. Why the right? Okay, let's take a step back and look at this. So this guy is now, I can't remember when I don't see him anymore, but he's just going to the gym, he's running without surgery, because we actually showed his body, oh, there's a left leg. And sometimes it's just enough to take some pressure off this area of the right knee, which is so logical. So if you see that comparison, picture by picture by picture, it's like anyone can see why that right leg is in pain, not the left leg. But no one looks at it.
Apart from the person that's not looking at it from the same perspective.
Yeah, but if you have someone lie down on your table and you check that person's knee and you do a scan on the knee, yeah, you might see something is damaged or whatever. But you're missing why. Hip replacements. Why does someone need a hip replacement? Why that hip, not the other hip? And then what's interesting is hip replacements very, very often need to be replaced.
Because you've still got the same patterns of
because everything is the same. There is something, and this is crazy, Chris.
Mate, the medical industry is going to be coming after you after this podcast.
Oh no,
I'm teasing.
I'm not against. I think medicine is incredible, but the system does not allow to see doctors and whoever the full picture. There is something called failed back surgery syndrome, where people have their spines fused, and I think it's, don't quote me on the number, but I think it is something like 46% of people have either the same pain or worse after the surgery. So now these people are given a label of failed back surgery syndrome. How does that make you feel? Does it make you feel empowered, or does it make you feel like shit? I think it's pretty clear. Now, why is that the case? Okay, yes, you can go into pain science and how the brain kind of gets very, very sensitive to pain and all of that. That is true. But there might also be people where just nothing has changed how their body moves and puts pressure onto certain areas pre and post surgery. Just because you have a fusion there now, your body still relies on doing certain things. It's pretty wild. And but it's changing. So, you know, I am working with a doctor at the moment, and we did exactly this process. So he had this right back pain, right groin pain, and so on and so on. And we just asked, but why the right? So he kind of had a half answer to that already, because he had seen chiropractors and osteopaths who just always adjusted his pelvis. But they always adjusted his pelvis. Why did it go back? That's what no one had asked. So we're looking at that now. We're looking at him from a step back, saying, well, if this is happening and this is happening and this is happening, can you see how this is exactly where you have your pain? And now this also leads to this right ankle problem, left Achilles problem that you're also experiencing. And these are this pure mechanics of that. We overlay his history onto that. Well, he tore an adductor. So his pelvis is dropped. And it keeps being dropped, and he keeps having it adjusted. But no one asked, well, how can we make it stick? How can we actually get its full potential back? Could the adductor, which attaches to the pelvis and the leg, have got something to do with it? Well, yes, because that's what we're working on. And he keeps leveling off every week. And he said, as a doctor, he said to me, this is the first time in 10 years that someone has been able to explain this to me. So, and this gives me so much hope. You know, going back to, well, why do I do this? No one should go through all this shit but it's slowly, probably too slowly changing by actually working with people like him, who themselves were in the system, realize something is missing here. That gives me hope that this just kind of spreads, and people don't just accept their glute exercises, and they, don't just rush off to surgery. They just keep asking why, and they keep challenging the people that they see with that question. So yeah, it's quite refreshing when I do work with people who are really in the system that failed so many people, and they start to realize it themselves.
The final question I have on here is in these notes are where to begin with the work. It would seem pretty obvious to me now that where you begin is by being curious.
That's for sure. Yeah. Or where to begin. There is a very good program by Gary Ward on his website, Work Your Body Up, that takes you through these basic, and I say basic because they should just be present in all of our bodies, not because they're easy, but basic movements of your pelvis, of your ribcage, of your neck, of your shoulders. To wake your body up. It's on his website, findingscenter.co.uk. It's very cheap. That's a brilliant starting point. There's another program, Wake Your Feet Up. If you have kind of problems in the lower body, you might want to check that out. And it's amazing to work with people who've gone through these programs because they have such a good foundation. Otherwise, just be curious. When you stand, where do you feel your feet? And then, if you go back in the conversation to all these pelvic motions, tilting it forward, tilting it back, hiking it left, hiking it right, shifting it left, shifting it right, turning it left, turning it right. Make a checklist. What can you do? What can't you do? Look at yourself in the mirror, because what you feel might be different to what you see. And just by actually starting this process, you're already starting to change things. And you might start to realize, oh yeah, I actually can only do this on one side, not the other side. And then if you do choose Gary's program, it will kind of take you down the road of exploring it in more detail. Of course, people can check out my website, my Instagram. People can chat to me. I'm always happy to chat.
Which is your website, your Instagram, which is?
It's Instagram is @decryptbodywork, and then the website is decrypt-bodywork.com. There's a button to book a free chat with me. No strings attached. Simply to have a chat, to discuss what someone is struggling with, what they are looking for, and to already get an idea of how we could approach this. Yeah, generally become aware. What do you notice? Go for a walk. What do you notice?
Thanks, Dom.
Thank you.
Appreciate the conversation, and obviously appreciate your work, because it's radically changed my life over the past 5 years. So I'm forever telling people, book a session with Dom. And yeah, because like I said, it's radically changed my life and my understanding, and has been a level of support that I've needed, physically, but also mentally and emotionally. So very, very grateful for you. So
that is a whole another podcast, that link, that connection between the
Yeah.
emotional side of all of this.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course, there's many different layers to it and lots of depth. And yeah, maybe perhaps that's another conversation, but yeah, awesome. Thanks, mate. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Chris.